Okay, we're recording.
Awesome.
Did it get scarier?
No.
No?
Not yet.
You're not scared yet? I'm impressed. This is amazing.
We'll see
You
how it
should
goes,
be
though.
terrified.
Yeah, you're a scary person.
I know, right?
You're actually scarier online than you are in person.
Yeah. The internet thinks I'm scary, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm one of those ranty influencers, I guess. But
Yeah, in a good way, though.
it's tough love, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, ready? Now we'll do pro intro. We're going to keep all that in because it was great. But what's up, everybody? It's Justin. Welcome to another episode of the Clovis Culture Podcast. I am very excited about today because I have a co-host for the first time ever. This is super exciting because anytime I have a guest on, we're always talking about a specific thing, like CBD or plastic surgery in the most recent ones. And this is going to be really cool to just kind of get to talk Clovis, health, and wellness. So introduce yourself, tell the people who you are, what you do.
Yeah, for
Let's dive in.
So my name is Lilly. I have been a Clovis, I guess I'd call myself a Clovis OG at this point.
Oh, hell yeah.
My husband actually was the one that came across your podcast back in January 2 years ago. And he was just searching paleo because we had done the whole 30 and we were into like the whole paleo thing. And so he was looking for new podcasts and he searched and he found yours, the perfect paleo podcast back in the day.
Yeah.
And then I was the one that got really hooked and it was just taking in all the information, just absorbing it like crazy. I was really into nutrition, still am. Since then, I've been paleo and Clovis ever since. And since that time, I actually have now become a certified holistic health coach and am in the process of launching my own health coaching business online so that I can have the freedom to travel and work from home. And it's moving slowly and I'm learning a lot. And and then I moved to Boulder from California this past May. Just randomly really wanted to move to the mountains and we finally were able to do so. And so we came here and it's been amazing and just starting over and being the person that I wanted to be. And then you moved here. Mm-hmm. And so we met up for coffee and it was great. And then here we are. The rest is history.
Yeah. You met the whole crew, the Magic Mountain House. We had Thanksgiving together. It was awesome.
Yeah. So great. I mean, my husband Austin and I have been talking about creating community the same way you have for a long time now, especially since we kind of started on this whole health journey, just wanting to find like-minded people to surround ourselves with, people that inspire us and such. And it's been kind of a journey, especially moving out here, not knowing anyone, and then COVID and everything happening. So we were kind of on lockdown for a while and just with ourselves, but still really trying to manifest some sort of like-minded community. And so then when you came into the picture and then introduced us to all the other people at the Magic Mountain House, it was like our manifestation had finally come true. We were like, yes, this is awesome. Like we feel so inspired and motivated every time we hang out with all of you guys. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, there's a really solid crew here. I mean, the expertise floating around in that house in everything from like entrepreneurship, health and wellness, everything in between is really kind of staggering. I have like a lot of pinch me moments, even like hanging out among everybody. And then, yeah, it was so interesting the way you guys popped up and it was Austin actually hit me on Instagram and was like, it's Lily's birthday. Will you meet up with us? I was like, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Totally.
So embarrassing.
We had a great time though.
It's just funny because I'm way more of an introvert and he's such an extrovert. And so I, fangirl totally when you moved out here. But I would have never reached out and been like, hey, let's get coffee. It's just not, I don't know. I'm more like reserved in that way. But it was my birthday, September 30th. And so he was like, I think it was like the weekend after or something. And he like made it a surprise to like go out to visit you. And I had no idea what we were doing. And we were driving to Golden. I was like, wait, the only thing I know in Golden is Justin. And then I kind of figured it out. But yeah, it was cute. He was trying to do something nice for me and it was awesome.
He's got such a good heart. I love that dude. So I want to ask you too, just for the people, for the record, right? How am I in person? Am I a ranty asshole?
No.
Yeah, there we go.
No. The ranty part, yeah, but the asshole part, no, absolutely not. No, you are, that's the thing is like you are exactly the same in person as you are online, just less scary, I think. Just because like you can feel someone's like loving presence when you're actually with them in the room. And it's like, yeah, you just have, the same way you do online is like you just have this presence about you that makes other people feel comfortable in their own skin. And I can really tell that about people. And yeah, it's the same in person as I think it is online.
I love that. That's what I'm going for. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So where were you at in terms of what attracted you to Clovis? What got you hooked? What was your health like at that time, and how have things changed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my health journey started after I graduated college, which was in 2017, and my health was the worst it's ever been after college, which is expected. I did all of the things you do, drinking, stress, not sleeping, whatever, and eating a lot of junk food because, mind you, I grew up in Costa Rica where we didn't really have fast food. I mean, we had a little bit, but not at all compared to here. And my mom is very much into holistic health and wellness, and she's like the best chef I've ever met in my entire life. So I was really blessed growing up with like homemade meals. Like my lunches were like super gourmet, and so I had good health growing up. But then after college, when I moved to the States, it was just horrible. And my worst symptoms were bloating. I like literally looked pregnant after everything I ate. I'd gained weight. Migraines started coming on. I was not sleeping well. I was stressed. It was just the whole array of symptoms. And so then I started cooking for myself after I graduated and cooking for Austin and loving that and slowly starting getting to get my health back, but nothing extreme. And then I came upon the Whole30 in August of 2018, I believe. So we did that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a new person. Like I'd lost tons of weight. My mental clarity was through the roof. Like I literally felt so good, and so did Austin. And so I was like, this is it. Like, and this makes sense. Like everything I've been studying, the whole paleo approach to nutrition, I'm like, this finally makes sense to me. Because I tried a little bit. I dabbled around in veganism and lots of different things and fad diets, and paleo and Whole30 really made sense for me, and it resonated with my body. And so I did that, and then I just kind of kept eating that way afterwards, just not as strict. And then when I came upon Clovis, because I was not eating a lot of protein. That's the one thing that I wasn't doing. And I was still bloating. Like that had reduced, but it had not gone away at that point. And so I found Clovis and I started working with you. And I remember in the email you were asking me for my health goals. And I was like, well, my bloating is really bad, so definitely fixing my gut health is a priority. And then I was like, and I know this sounds bad, but I really want to have a six-pack. Like,
yeah.
I would love to have ab definition, like if I'm just being honest. And you were like, okay, forget about the six-pack. We have to work on your gut for now. Like that is number one priority. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And so I just dove in and we did Clovis until we still are doing Clovis. And it was just, it changed my approach. And even in just the paleo view of health, of nutrition, it changed it to where the focus is really protein. And that changed things for me because I suddenly wasn't as hungry all the time. The bloating is still something I'm dealing with because I later figured on I had SIBO, and so that really had nothing to do with Clovis or my approach to eating. It was just something that I had to deal with extra herbs and supplements. But it's been great, honestly. Like I don't have my sugar cravings like I used to. I have lost like the extra weight. I feel really good. My mental clarity's through the roof. I sleep really well, like all the things. It's just amazing. And I'm now in the works of sharing this with the world. Like I really just want to make an impact the same way you have on me. I really want to do that with other people. So that's what my business is meant to be. Yeah,
I love it. And we'll connect you with everybody, like show notes, all that stuff too, your Instagram, all those things. We'll get everybody on the Lilly bandwagon as well. But so that's why you're here as well too, because we've had conversations, like we've talked health and wellness a lot, and now I've gotten to hang out on a personal level and everything. So we had this idea to kind of do this podcast, which is like a co-hosting situation. We've talked about a couple things that we want to cover, topics that we want to hit. And we're just going to run through them. You got some notes up there. I'm just going to kind of spitball a lot of this stuff. And let's hit the ground running. You want to do the thing?
Yeah, let's do it. Should we start with the metabolic health topic?
Yeah, let's start there. I think that's great too, because it's important to understand your six-pack example is a really good example here, because there are actually a lot of ways to shortchange yourself in health and wellness and get the six-pack at the expense of your health. I've seen this a lot. Like I've had a lot of professional athletes or aesthetic bodybuilder type people, like physique competition people who are just metabolically destroyed. It's like really, really bad. So you can get there at the expense of health. So anytime someone comes to me with a goal like that, I'm like, hey, let's get this baseline over here done and then get you to a place where you can get ab definition in a healthy way. But if we do it the other way around, it's going to be really problematic. So yeah, let's dig into metabolic health and some of the differences between metabolically broken people and metabolically healthy people and all that. So what you got
for
over
sure.
there?
And just going off of that too, I think a lot of the people like in CrossFit and bodybuilding and everything, like the people who aren't as healthy view them as, this epitome of health, because from the outside it looks really great. But what I've learned from you and in this whole journey is that just because you're skinny and fit doesn't mean you're healthy on the inside. And it becomes really obvious, especially when they switch their diet to, a healthier, less sugar-based diet, and they're getting all these crazy symptoms. It's like, that's where you can kind of tell, like, they're not metabolically flexible, where they can switch from burning sugar to burning fat as easily as someone should be able to. So, maybe that's something we can talk about, is getting your advice from people, that aren't The Rock, as you talked about earlier. And this idea of like saying as you say, not as you do. Maybe you can go off of that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. That's a big deal. So right now I'm in a weird situation. I'm going to say this out loud and Clovis people are going to lose their fucking minds. But I probably eat between 200. That's okay. We're not live. We'll keep it. But
oh no.
But yeah, we'll fix that, I guess, later. Yeah, sure. So right now I'm eating somewhere between 200 and 230 grams of carbohydrates. That's total carbohydrates. It's not net carbohydrates, so don't lose your minds completely. But generally speaking, when people come to Clovis, they're going to get a plan from me that's probably less than 50 grams net carbohydrates. So that might be somewhere 75 to 100 grams of total carbohydrates, depending on what foods they're choosing. And they just lose their minds and when they hear that. But I fell into a situation where I was basically had gotten like some level of orthorexia from doing this type of work for a long time. The problem with this type of work is I tend to work with the sickest of the sick. So people come to me just so metabolically broken, whether type 2 diabetic or full-blown insulin resistance or at least 100 pounds overweight. Like I don't know how many people at this point I've helped lose over 100 pounds. It's a significant number of people. And the problem with that is just like affirmations, right? If you say something over and over and over enough times, it can become your reality. And what happened with me was I'm teaching people to eat at a caloric deficit. I'm teaching them to remove all processed carbohydrates, and I'm basically trying to reset their broken metabolism. Then I have my life where I'm training calisthenics and training jujitsu or CrossFit or powerlifting or all these crazy things I do. And I'm in the sauna and I'm on the Carol bike and I'm doing cold plunges and everything that I'm doing and completely metabolically healthy. All of a sudden, I found myself eating like a significant caloric deficit and not fueling with any carbohydrates at all, basically a ketogenic type, carnivore type diet. And I just smoked my health. It was crazy. The lack of energy I was consuming, like I talk about protein versus energy, so energy being fat and or carbs. My energy was so low that my body just could not do the things it was supposed to do. And my blood work got worse and all these things. But anyway, that said, I had to take a completely different approach where now I'm probably eating, probably 20 to 30% of my total calories are coming from carbohydrates, slightly less fat, slightly less saturated fat than I'm used to doing. And I even kind of decreased my protein to about the 25% total daily calories range. I just need a lot of energy. I'm doing like hour and 10-minute calisthenic workouts that are crazy high volume, and the cold plunges, I don't even know how many calories shit like that burns. And I go for walks every day and I'm just very physically active, and I'm mostly muscle. So my basal metabolic rate is something like 35 to 40% higher than a normal BMI person at my size. I'm burning far more calories because I'm more muscle. So anyway, that whole situation, the way that I'm doing things, if someone with like type 2 diabetes who's 100 pounds overweight were to do that same thing, even at a caloric deficit, that's going to be a train wreck for them. So you don't want to do what I'm doing the same way we talked about the 80-20 principle, right? Yeah. Like everyone's like, every Sunday, The Rock does this giant crazy cheat day where he's eating pizza and brownies and all this stuff. If you do that and you're metabolically broken, you're just going to compound the problem and become more metabolically broken,
Yeah, exactly. it's this idea that everyone is so different, and we just, there is no one approach to nutrition that fits everyone. You know, like we can't compare ourselves to you. You've been paleo, like you said, for 8 years now. So you've been on this journey for a lot longer, and your physique is different, and what you do is different, and your exercise routine and all these things play a factor. And so it's like we have to get to the point of being metabolically healthy before we start tweaking our diet and adjusting to our needs. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just understanding that this is not, it's not permanent, right? So you have or had SIBO?
I probably still do.
Okay.
But not as much anymore, or not as heavily.
Yeah, so something like that, like if we just basically remove all dietary fiber from your diet for some period of time, it's arguably going to be beneficial, you know? That doesn't mean that I want you to be a carnivore forever.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into the problem we talked about earlier. So let's say you've been metabolically broken and you've been 50 to 100 pounds overweight for the last 3 decades. And then you come to me and you give me a solid, like a whole 30. You do 30 days, you give me a solid 30 days of Clovis. And then day 31, what everyone does, anyone coming from a standard American diet where they enjoy junk food, like literally enjoy that shit, day 31, it's like, I want cheesecake, I want pizza, and I want beer, and I'm going to have a cheat day because I deserve it, because I'm rewarding myself for this 30 days. People email me and they're just like, Justin, I feel like I'm dying. This is worse than any hangover I've ever had. I have diarrhea. I have a headache. I can't get out of bed. I feel terrible. And I told you earlier, that they will actually say, like, if this is how I'm going to feel every time I eat my favorite foods, I don't want to do this anymore. They'd rather go back to being unhealthy because that was their normal. But this is really the first 30 days ever that they've given their body a chance to reset and begin to heal itself. So it's like having a stab wound. You go to the ER, stitch it up, they pull the knife out, stitch it up, and 30 days later, you rip it out and you bleed all over the floor, and then you got to go back and get stitched up again. Or the analogy I used of when I got shoulder surgery as a boxer, they told me, you cannot box for the next 6 months. That's a long time. When I was boxing 6 days a week, that's a long time to do no boxing. At no point at the 2-month mark did I say, I should probably go box right now. This is going to be really good for me. And I just did 2 months of no boxing, so I totally deserve to go box right now.
Yeah.
That's really the same analogy, because you are healing at that level. Your body has undergone significant trauma for 30 years. It's a long time. You got to undo a lot of shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think people realize how long it can take to reverse all the damage. And especially if your gut is all messed up, if you have a leaky gut, or like me, SIBO, so an overgrowth of bad bacteria, it just takes time, and it takes consistency. And I mean, yeah, you can have some sort of cheat days, but you're really just hurting yourself, and it's just going to take you longer to get there. And I think this idea plays into like dairy as well. And other, just as an example, dairy, like most Americans, I would say, can't properly digest dairy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the dairy is at fault. I do think it is inflammatory the way that you get it in most grocery stores, as it is pasteurized and everything. But nevertheless, a healthy body with a healthy gut should be able to properly digest dairy. But when it is crossing the gut wall and affecting your brain and everything else, it's usually because you have some sort of gut dysbiosis or a damaged gut. So it's like the goal is always to heal first, so that then you can enjoy these foods in moderation without severely reacting to them.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. It's the idea, the in moderation idea only works if you're metabolically healthy. That's it. So like, I'm not saying, like, of course, if you have a glass of milk, that shouldn't cripple you. You shouldn't be in the bathroom 20 minutes later. I mean, unless, like, if you're full-blown lactose intolerant.
Yeah, unless you're allergic.
Exactly. Or the same thing if you have celiac disease, you probably shouldn't eat gluten. That's just basic. You know what I mean? Sorry, luck of the draw. Like, I don't have a problem with gluten. Some people do. Yeah. So if you have a problem with that, that's a real thing. But for most people metabolically healthy without a diagnosed condition or food sensitivity, you should be able to handle these things. Like, you should be able to eat a donut and be fine. You should be able to drink a shitty Starbucks latte and be fine. But the problem is, that's most people's diet most of the time for most of their life. And they're so metabolically broken that they really need to heal from that. And it's like, maybe someday we'll get you to a point. And then, as you've seen, like, what happens with most Clovis people? If they really stick with it, and I get 6 months, 8 months, a year out of them, they're like, I would just never eat that food. I have no desire to eat Krispy Kreme. I don't want to do it.
No, your palate completely changes. I really think we are like resensitizing our taste buds, even to sugar. Like the fact that 85%, 90% dark chocolate is sweet now. I mean, that just goes to show that like your palate does change again. But when you're constantly eating these hyperpalatable foods, it's almost, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but it's almost like with drugs. Like you have to increase your intake to feel it when you're doing it constantly. Yeah. It's the same with like sugar, you know? So,
absolutely.
So you really have to take it out of your diet for a while, and then you start tasting food again the normal way.
Yeah. When I first started, there was a article, I think it was in like Time magazine or something. So this is 8 years ago. I had no study in biochemistry or anything like that at that point, and I wasn't certified anything, you know. And I read this article, and it was just about like a standard like run-of-the-mill American family. And I think the journalist guy, he was like a journalist, and he was trying to do an experiment. So they removed all sugar from the house for 30 days with their kids and everything. Like no honey, no sugar of any kind. Like none like the paleo substitutes. They weren't like, oh, we won't do sugar, but we'll do agave nectar. You know, like they removed all sugar for 30 days. Day 31, they actually got a cheesecake. I remember like cheesecake was the thing. Mm-hmm. They got a cheesecake for the whole family, and they all like took a bite at the same time. Like, cheers, let's eat our cheesecake. The sugar's back. And the kids spit it out.
Really?
Like their little kids spit it out of their mouth, and they were like, I can't do this. Yeah. Their taste buds changed so significantly in just 30 days. Little kids love sugar. Yeah. Like for kids to spit it out, and it was that journalist guy was just like, it broke my brain. I was like, I never would have thought that my kids would ever spit out cheesecake. Mm-hmm. And that's when you realized you're just programmed. I remember one girl I was dating once, her sister had a baby, and we were sitting, we were in the kitchen once, and she's like bouncing the baby, holding the baby. Baby's probably 1 year old. Mm-hmm. And she's just like giving the baby sips of her sugary coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. And the baby's just like sipping it through the straw. And I remember just being like, oh, I can't. Don't make a comment. Don't make a comment.
Coffee
like,
too?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, I mean, I know there are parents out there that like literally like put splashes of soda in their kids' baby bottles and stuff. Like this stuff is happening from such a young age. Or even formula.
Is there a reason for that?
I don't know. I think they think it tastes good and it gets the kid to drink their shitty formula or whatever. Formula is also mostly processed carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So this is a very clever thing that food companies do. Like Nestle giving your kid baby formula, they don't have your best interest at mind. They're making your kid a sugar addict from fucking 4 months old, you know, and it carries through the rest of their life. Literally changes their taste buds from such a young age.
Yeah. And the kids adopting all the food habits that the parents have too. So it's like you have to take that into account. And they're born with a compromised immune system very often if the mom doesn't have a very healthy diet when she's pregnant or even before that. So it all plays a role, but it just takes time for sure to get back to a normal, balanced place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's use that as a spoiler alert. We'll talk about that. We'll circle back on that for sure, because I want to touch on the COVID vaccine and everything. But there's an interesting article that you found from Max Lugavere, right, from Genius Life?
Yeah, he shared it, and that's how I found it. But then it's from PubMed, and it was on, let's see if I can find the title of this. So it's called Orthorexia Nervosa and Eating Disorder Symptoms in Registered Dietitian Nutritionists in the United States. And it was a study that they did. This was back from 2017, but it just resurfaced. So that's why we're talking about it, because it also ties back into this topic. Basically, the conclusion was that both orthorexia nervosa, which is like an obsession with eating healthy, and eating disorders in general are more common among registered dietitian nutritionists than they are the general population, which is a very interesting find.
And I think what was the conclusion of it? It was the percentage of people that admitted to orthorexia nervosa? Yeah,
so it was an electronic survey, and it was sent out to 2,500 RDs, but they got 636 responses, and of that sample, 49.5% were at risk of orthorexia nervosa, and 12.9% were at risk of an eating disorder.
Okay, this is super interesting. I know which direction I want to take this conversation, because, so we're just going to call that 50%. 50% of registered dietitians surveyed claim that they are at risk of orthorexia nervosa. Now, orthorexia is very real, and I've experienced it for many years. I think it took me probably until COVID and working with my functional medicine doctors at Wild Health. Wild Health is fantastic. I have a great doctor, Dr. Mallon, and Julia is my health coach, and we've had really long, deep conversations. And I don't think I quite understood the depth of my own orthorexia. Was really, really problematic. And it's interesting because anytime you take on any dietary we just got to call it what it is. It's dogma. No matter who you are, like when you're in this industry, you have a dietary dogma. As we know, like my good buddy Paul Saladino has a dietary dogma. Vegans have a dietary dogma. Whole30 people have a dietary dogma. And then the registered dietitians, also what I would call the evidence-based society, whatever, evidence-based groups, they have a dogma as well, which is just like whatever the medical community tells you is correct. So you have this issue with registered dietitians. Diana Rogers is a great resource for this because she is a registered dietitian, and she talks openly about how basically everything she learned in school was garbage. And then she did a hospital internship as well, and she was a dietitian at a hospital, and that she's feeding people Jell-O and toast and bananas and literally applesauce and shit. And they're trying to recover from like really serious stressors on the body. And she basically said that becoming a registered dietitian, the education she got told her exactly what not to do to get people healthy. And that's so twisted. And there's another quote from somebody, I can't remember who, but basically he's talking about the American Dietetics Association. The plan that the American Dietetics Association or Diabetes Association, whatever it's called, lays out is basically a recipe for type 2 diabetes. It's insane. So the Diabetes Association that's in charge of most of the information, or like if you ever look at like diabetes, there's a diabetes magazine, and somebody took like all the covers of diabetes magazines, and every single one was like a piece of cake, a piece of pie, baked goods, bread, all this thing, trying to teach you how to eat junk food in moderation when you have diabetes. They're basically a marketing funnel for big pharma. They're taking people and destroying their lives in nutrition, and then they're getting on metformin and insulin and all these things. It's as if they're literally feeding patients to big pharma, right? But anyway, so the registered dietitians things, they get it stuck in their head that they have to eat a certain way. And registered dietitians are very good at the calories in, calories out in moderation model. And we know from all of the research that hyperpalatable foods in moderation do not work. What I think is happening with the registered dietitians is they're trying to manage their body image, doing the things that they tell their clients to do, and it doesn't work. So you have these people that I think this was in the article as well, where it says they're really struggling with their exercise and their body image. This is a real problem for them because you don't want to be a fat registered dietitian. So if you're doing everything you're telling your clients to do and you're getting fat, there are a lot of fat registered dietitians. What happens? Now you're going to have orthorexia. And you're going to start thinking every bite of food I put in my mouth is going to make me fat. If I eat too many calories, I'm going to be fat. So now you're at a chronic caloric deficit and you're trying to eat like healthy whole grains in moderation. And those hyperpalatable foods are breaking your metabolism. And now you're completely orthorexic. You're trying like hell to follow the registered dietitian dogma and your health is falling apart. That's what I think is happening, is because of the foods that they're including, they're not getting the results they want, and it's leading them to become orthorexic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the same food system that is keeping people sick and on pharmaceuticals is teaching registered dietitians and nutritionists the information that they then regurgitate to their clients or their patients. So I think the whole system is really just at fault here. And I could only imagine the frustration and the feeling of helplessness that these registered dietitians, and it's not all, of course, but the dogmatic ones, I think, especially, they must feel when they aren't getting results, and in turn their clients or their patients aren't getting any results either. It must be super frustrating and just, upsetting. So I can imagine that definitely messes with your head a lot and ends up messing with your whole approach to nutrition and health. And it's really sad, actually. It's
super sad. And it's like, again, people think I'm anti-doctor or anti-nutritionist or anti-registered dietitian or whatever. That's not the case. Like, I really think that these are good people. Yeah. They got into this for the same reasons you and I did. I got into this by accident. I was just playing music, but like, I got to a point where I was like, people need this information. I want to share this with them. Those people have the same thought. They go, so many people come to me and they're just like, hey, I really want to help people the way you do. Where do I go? And I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, you have some education now and some credentials. I have some credentials, and the credentials that I got, I wouldn't fucking tell anybody to do that stuff. You know, especially when I went to my specialist in sports nutrition and specialist in fitness nutrition are 2 different certifications, and it's just all calories in, calories out, carb loading before fitness and all that. I don't teach anybody any of that shit, but the credentials work for me. You know, so it's this crazy thing where people are in it for the right reason, but there's so many people that went and took those same courses that I didn't do the necessary self-directed study to really figure out how things work. They have no experience with clients at all, and they just go out into the world and they go, here's what I learned in my textbook. What breaks these people's brains is if I'm having an argument with an evidence-based person or a PhD or whatever the fuck, right? It becomes this thing of like, when were your textbooks published? Tell me that. Most people, it's like literally 17 to 20 years ago that these textbooks were published and super behind the studies, the current up-to-date studies. And 2, who paid for your textbooks? Most people cannot answer that question. So I use like Harvard Medical School as an example of this. Multi-million-dollar buildings don't just pop up in prime real estate in Cambridge, Boston for $0. Let's put a medical school here out of the goodness of our hearts. That doesn't happen. It's paid for by pharmaceutical companies and big food companies. They are paying for your medical school, straight up. They decide the information that goes in the textbooks. Anybody that can't see that, I mean, the conversation ends there, and I just have to, I can't talk to you about this. Like but it becomes this thing of like, if you're graduated from Harvard Medical School, you want to look at a guy like Justin and be like, that guy's a fucking quack. Don't listen to him because I'm an MD and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But if we sit and had a 2-hour conversation like this and we start talking biochemistry, I'm going to make that guy look real dumb in the realm of nutrition. In the realm of medicine, he's going to make me look like a kindergarten kid. I know nothing about what medicine is good for what symptom or whatever. That's his whole thing. If you break your femur, let that dude reset it. I'm not going to reset your femur. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to stitch you up from a stab wound. I'm not that guy. But when it comes to nutrition and epigenetics and all these things, getting people metabolically flexible, no doctor's going to tell you how to do that, except the doctors that are MDs and then went on to study nutrition on their own. So it's just it's a completely broken system. It's twisted.
Yeah. But luckily, we're seeing more and more doctors and nutritionists and registered dietitians that are going beyond what they learned in medical school and doing their own research. And I think that that's what it comes down to is like, don't stop learning. And just because someone says something is this way, it like doesn't mean that's truth. You know, you should always keep learning and keep doing your own research and coming to your own conclusions based on what's working and what isn't, you know, and looking at numbers like that's, I forgot, I heard this on one of your podcasts somewhere, but, I don't remember actually, but they were talking about like only getting advice from someone who's healthier than them. Yeah. Essentially. So it's like, yeah, taking advice from a nutritionist or from a medical doctor who you can clearly tell is not healthy is probably a red flag. Like, you know, it's just asking questions and having critical thinking.
Absolutely. And that's most of the medical community. Because if you think about it, right, we talked about this earlier, like 88% of Americans have metabolic dysfunction by mainstream medical standards, which means by my standards, probably 95% of people, which means most of the living doctors in America probably have metabolic dysfunction. I'm not taking nutrition advice from them. I'm just not going to do it. That's insane. You know, so I don't know how to fix that. I don't know what the answer is or anything, but it's it's a systemic problem. The whole thing is so broken. And then you get in this place too, like the Paul Saladinos of the world that go out as medical doctors and say like, hey, maybe we should only eat meat. And people just slaughter him. They just come out of the woodworks with their credentials and they're just completely rude and mean to him. And it's like, it's terrible. They just can't open their minds to any kind of outside thinking. So an important point that I try to tell people is throughout all of history, if you take when we were smoking cigarettes in doctors' offices and smoking cigarettes on airplanes, when we thought that the earth was flat and all the planets, including the sun, revolved around the earth, when we thought these things were true, those were the top scientists in the history of mankind. Always. They were at the top of their game. They were the smartest humans to ever live in all of human evolution. They were the smartest people in history that thought that shit. And then someone comes along and says that the earth revolves around the sun, and they would put them to death, literally, for it. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. So to think that in 2020 right now, we're the only time in history where our smartest scientists in the world are actually correct. It would be the only time in history that shit is actually correct. Think about that. We've never been correct, ever. We've never been correct. We stack information on top of each other and we learn more things. We learn germ theory and all this stuff comes out. And we learn how to make processed foods to help people not starve to death. But all along the way, every time we have some technological breakthrough in medicine and nutrition, we fuck things up. And we don't know till 40 years later that we fucked things up. So to think that we have it all figured out right now is the ultimate ego pissing contest. Just it's little children running the show. So any evidence-based people out there listening to this, like, don't be a fucking child. Just open your mind. That's end rant.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
And that goes for everything.
For everything.
For everything. You just don't ever say something is ultimate truth, because we are all just learning, and especially nutrition. It's so nuanced. I mean, and every human is so different. It's like it's going to be a lot of learning to come. So I think this is a good transition into the COVID vaccine and vaccines in general. But I mean, this is obviously a hot topic right now and a topic of discussion. And I think a lot of people are concerned about this disease, especially because there is so many, unhealthy, metabolically broken people out there, especially in the US. What are your thoughts on this vaccine? Should we get it? Should we not?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what I'm going to do myself. And what I'm going to do myself is based on my lifestyle and what I want to do going forward. So I'm going to explain that. But the first thing I want to do here is really explain to people what's happening. This is an mRNA vaccine or an RNA vaccine. And it's Moderna and Pfizer that are both doing these studies on it and things like that. 80% of people have some pretty gnarly symptoms from it, straight up. It's very COVID-like, very flu-like. So that's worth noting there. And I'm going to explain why that is happening. So the number one problem I have with marketing here is that there are people claiming that the mRNA vaccines or RNA vaccines are safer because you're not being injected with the virus. This is not true. So I'm going to walk you through this. mRNA is messenger RNA. So my main point of study when I first got into all this was genetics, epigenetics, and then I dug into biochemistry a little bit later. So when you learn about genetics and epigenetics, you learn how proteins are made. So all of your cells in your body are made up of proteins and all the tissues are made up of cells. So it's little building blocks, right? So there's DNA. All of your genes are hard-coded with DNA. That DNA is copied through a process called transcription. That becomes mRNA. This is messenger RNA. Literally, it's carrying a message. So in your DNA, there are these 4 letters, A, C, G, and T, right? So if you think about it like a supercomputer, all computers read binary code, 1s and 0s. We have 4 of those. So it's exponentially more complicated than binary code, where we are the ultimate supercomputers. So your body is making a copy of the DNA, that's mRNA. It's taking those letters. So picture I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this. Think of a label maker. Right? So those little old school label makers, it stamps the letter, right? So you take a strip of a bunch of random letters, A, C, G, and T, in different combinations. That message is fed into a ribosome. The ribosome reads those letters and it's giving it instructions for what protein to create. It is the instruction manual for building proteins. Viruses are proteins. Same way lectins are proteins, all these things, right? Viruses are proteins. So what's happening is they're injecting the specific mRNA into your body. Your cells grab that mRNA, feed it to the ribosomes, and your own body creates the virus. So it's literally giving your cells the instruction manual to create COVID-19 in your body. So your ribosomes create this virus, spit it out into the bloodstream, your body freaks out, says, I don't like that protein, kill it. So that rages an immune response, an immune attack on that protein. They figure out how to kill it, antigens are created, and now you're theoretically immune to COVID-19. That's how this mRNA vaccination is working. Compared to a traditional vaccination, where they're taking the dead, quote unquote, or inactive virus itself, they're taking the protein and injecting the protein directly. So they're skipping the mRNA step. You're getting the protein, the virus injected directly into you. Your immune system freaks out, fuck this virus, and they kill it, and they create antigens, and you're immune, right? But no matter how you slice this, the virus is in your body. And the only way that you build immunity to anything is for your immune system to defeat this thing and remember how it defeated it and put it in the memory bank of your immune system. When X protein comes into our body, Y defense kills it. That's how immunity works. So I just want people to understand how this mRNA vaccine is actually working. So that's just a tiny little masterclass on that. It's very important to understand that. So the problem here is this is going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of people. No matter how we slice it, anytime vaccinations are created or administered, people die. There is some percentage of the population that's going to have massive, catastrophic complications from this vaccination. Here's the really sad part. This vaccination was given emergency status and all these things and rushed to the public to protect the most at risk among us, which are people who are metabolically broken. We know this. Low vitamin D levels, insulin resistance, high blood glucose levels, all these things put you at a higher risk, type 2 diabetes, much higher risk of complications from COVID. So we come out with the vaccine to protect those people. Those people are also at the highest risk of complications from this vaccination. And we have this weird thing that they're doing now where it requires 2 vaccinations. So they give you a vaccination, and then I believe you get put on quarantine, and then 14 days later, I believe, I could be wrong about that, somebody can fact check me, you get another vaccination. Now, what's happened in a lot of these studies is so many people get such unpleasant experiences with the first vaccination, they don't want to get the second one. So we have this weird situation on our hands. It's going to be a logistical shit show to get the vaccination done. Now, all that said, would I get the vaccine? I love international travel. I have friends all over the world, and I love to visit those friends. In 2019, the year before COVID, I visited 8 different countries. Now, unfortunately, call me privileged, whatever you want to do, I am probably not going to be negatively affected by this vaccine. I am very metabolically healthy, and I'm young. So if they say, there are airlines right now saying you can't travel without the vaccination. One thing I want to touch on real quick, if you think for a second that the government can mandate this vaccination, it's not going to happen. But the private market will. And here's where we're fucked. I mean, people really don't understand this. It is within an employer's rights to say, you can't work here, you can't come to the office place if you don't have a vaccination. Private schools especially, your kid can't come here if your kid's not vaccinated. You can't travel on this airline if you're not vaccinated. And you can say, well, fuck you, I'm not giving you my business. And they can go, that's cool, millions of other people got the vaccine, we don't need your business. So it's really the free market that's going to cause this problem, in my opinion. But all that said, I weigh risk versus reward. I love international travel. If they tell me you can't, if I can travel the globe freely by getting, even though I've already had COVID and recovered from it, if I can travel the globe freely by getting this vaccination, I will 100% do it if it's my only option. Either that or I'll find a badass doctor and I will bribe the fuck out of them and I will get vaccination paperwork. I haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet, but
that's smart. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it comes down to everyone has to make the best decision that they can based on the research they've done and based on their own health. And it is crazy to think that our freedom in a way can be taken away by not injecting this virus into our bodies. Because yeah, if you're not able to travel and you're not able to put your kid in private school and things like that, that's taking away your freedom of choice to do things the way you want to do them because you don't have the vaccine. And so that's where it gets kind of scary. But at the end of the day, it really just comes back to your health, and you won't have negative effects for the most part if you are a metabolically healthy person. And so it always just comes back to that. So based on that, what are some ways to boost your immune system to fix your health and to get on the right track? Because that's the only thing we can proactively do is focus on ourselves and our health. I mean, there's not much else you can do besides just decide you're not going to get the vaccine and stay unhealthy forever. But
yeah, 100%. There's a couple different ways to go about this. So it's in the generalist of terms, I would just remove processed foods. That's like number one. Processed foods, fast foods, remove all of those things. Avoid hydrogenated vegetable oils like the plague. I mean, I think at this point, if there's one thing you could do with your health is read the ingredients on everything. Know that every restaurant in the world is basically cooking with canola oil, which is also called rapeseed oil. It's a garbage, toxic product. Remove hydrogenated vegetable oils. Vitamin D is huge. So vitamin D, if you're going to supplement vitamin D3 plus K2, I would try to get outside when you can, but it's wintertime. You know, most people in America can't get a ton of sunshine right now. But I would say remove the hydrogenated vegetable oils. I would supplement vitamin D3. I would try to get outside if you can. And then just try to adopt some form of a whole food diet. We could argue all day if you want to go plant-based, if you want to go paleo or carnivore or anything in between. It's like, if it exists in nature in the form that you're about to eat it, that's probably a solid bet. And of course, and I know that would basically rule out even things like my Clovis Complete Superfood, right? Like this is a bunch of different superfoods that are freeze-dried and combined together. That's technically a processed packaged food. So, I mean, it's like, do I think you should take that? Yeah, I take it every day. But if you really want to just really simplify this and have a filter to look through, if we don't talk about macros, if we don't talk about exercise, we don't talk about any of these things, I don't see your blood work, nothing, just generalization. Does this food that you're about to eat exist in nature in the form that you're about to eat it? Eat whole foods, change the world. Mm-hmm. That's really the best thing that you can do. And on a societal level, this is probably not going to make me a lot of fans, but I was thinking about this on the drive over here. I was like, okay, I want to try to get people to do something that I'm going to call consumption shaming. I think we need this desperately. So before anybody freaks out and jumps down my throat, I'm not talking about fat shaming. I'm not talking about any body image stuff, nothing like that. I am actually not cool with that at all. Like I'm a very alpha dude. If I catch you making fun of someone's body, I'm probably going to beat you up. But I really am not cool with that. But the consumption shaming thing, here's what I mean. The best example that I have of this is cigarette smokers. Right? We talked about this. Scientists used to think this was good for you. In the Mad Men days, in the 1950s, right, everyone was smoking cigarettes. Like, it was cool to smoke cigarettes. It was sophisticated. You were a fancy person. Then you have the Marlboro Man, like, riding horses, and he's a bad motherfucker, like, smoking his dark red cigarettes, you know? So everybody thought this was the thing. Doctors are smoking. We're smoking in airplanes. We're smoking in restaurants. Like, you're supposed to smoke cigarettes. That's a societal pressure. Societal pressure is massively powerful. Peer pressure is massively powerful. So what happens now? We fast forward to 2020. There is such a disgusting stigma around cigarettes. It's not even funny. I mean, if you're a cigarette smoker listening to this is probably going to trigger you, but it's like, people think you're gross. Mm-hmm. Straight up. It's like, you're the weirdo that's outside of the restaurant. It's cold, it's rainy, it's snowy, and you're out there trying to get your lighter to work because you got to get this fix, and everybody knows your fingers stink and your breath smells like an ashtray. Nobody wants to kiss you. Your clothes are stinky. We know that you struggle with addiction, so we're judging you psychologically and all these things. It's like, there's such a disgusting stigma around cigarettes. Now, what happens if that's consumption shaming. If we make people feel bad for their consumption of cigarettes, what happens if eating healthy becomes cool? What happens if you're going to, someone listen to this, right? If every morning you stop at Dunkin' Donuts and you get like, you know, a donut and a bagel slathered in margarine, and then you get a large iced coffee with 10 pumps of liquid caramel, sugar, whatever, and whipped cream, and you eat that every day for breakfast, guess what? You're gross. That's a gross consumption habit. It's a disgusting consumption habit. You are taking something that you know is irrefutably toxic for your body and killing you, just like cigarettes. And you're shoving it in your face every day because you enjoy how it makes you feel momentarily, just like cigarette smokers do. What if we really had it should be like a global push toward consumption shaming. Like, let's just stop the processed foods. I mean, that's literally it. There are so many people right now that are home with COVID. They don't want to give up their hot Cheetos, and they don't want to give up their microwavable pizzas, and everybody's drinking a shitload of alcohol right now. Like, alcohol consumption's through the roof. Processed food sales are through the roof. That's the other thing. Big Food's making a ton of money off the quarantine. Everybody's just buying tons of processed junk food, and they don't want to give it up. So they're raising their hand and saying, hey, government, come save me. I need a magic pill to protect me from COVID. Now we bring them this vaccination. Guess what? A lot of you are going to get wrecked by that vaccination. It's really going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. So like you said, the only thing that you can control is your metabolic health. And it's not that difficult. It's like, if you really just switch to a whole food diet, maybe, just maybe, go 12 hours a day without eating, just a 12-hour circadian rhythm fast, supplement some vitamin D, even something people don't like hearing this, but like cold showers, cold thermogenesis, like cold exposure is the fastest way that we know of to raise glutathione levels in the body, which is the mother of all antioxidants, plays a giant role in your immune system. So all these little tiny things you can do. I actually wrote an ebook called Combating Coronavirus early on in March, I think. And that was it. I basically just talked about environmental hormesis, cold exposure or sauna, fasting for about 12 hours a day, going for fasted walks. Like at the end of your 12-hour fast, go for a little walk, remove processed foods, like literally just stick to really healthy proteins and vegetables. I'm totally cool. If you want to eat some carbs, just make sure they're coming from like sweet potatoes and maybe some fruit or something like that. Totally cool. I mean, just remove processed foods. It's really that simple. It's so hard for me because I want to give you like this amazing answer that is like the secret to everything, but that's it. That's the whole fucking blueprint. So I don't really know what to tell people. That's kind of it.
Yeah, and it's this kind of thing. It's like people kind of know what they're supposed to do, but they're not doing it. And so that's where it's like, it really is simple. Like there is no magic pill. It's just changing your habits. And to that list, I think also adding sleeping, getting good sleep is so underrated. And especially now where everyone's at home all day staring at their computer, their melatonin's not being produced normally and they're not getting good sleep. Like that is such a huge, detriment to your health and affecting you so much more than you think. So getting a full 8 hours and turning off the screens before you go to bed and trying to relax the body and calm the nervous system before going to bed is also a really easy and free thing that you can do.
I'm so glad you said that. That's amazing. Yeah.
And managing stress is the other thing I was going to say, because obviously these times are more stressful than ever, and it's insane how much stress affects every system of our bodies and like absolutely every part of our day. And starting like a simple meditation practice or even a mindfulness practice or something like yoga or whatever it is that calms you down and gets you out of your head and into your body. Breath work is another good one. Do it for 5 minutes every day. Make it a habit. And like that, I mean, meditation for me has completely changed my life. It's the one practice that I don't go a day without. I mean, I will skip working out. I will skip cold showers. I'll skip all of the other things if I have to, but I will sit down for 5 minutes every morning and meditate because it has made such a difference in the way that I show up and in my health overall. So, and even making better decisions with your food. It's like if you're not in a stressed out state and, sleep deprived, you're way more likely to choose a healthier meal than to reach for some crackers or something easy because you're just stressed and panicking and,
Yeah.
So that's huge.
That's huge. I'm so glad you brought that up. And it's not just stress mitigation too. One, the sleep stuff's important, and obviously, blue blockers, things like that, if you want to watch some TV at night or whatever. But yeah, people are not only staring at screens right until they go to bed, they're snacking while they're staring at screens. Most people watch TV and eat food. That's what they do. Or they watch TV, eat food, and drink alcohol all at the same time. Yeah. So it's a real big problem. But the stress thing, I don't know how else to say this, but stop watching the news. Stop watching the news. I would say stop watching the news. And then I don't know if you've noticed this, but like our generation, one of the most popular genres of things right now, just entertainment in general, podcasts, movies, TV, documentaries, are real crime, like serial killer shit. People are like watching all these documentaries about like massive serial killers and people getting murdered and like all that. I'm like, whoa, okay, so all day on social media, you're getting hit with like Trump versus Biden and mask mandates and protests and all this crazy stuff. It's just like nonstop, and the vaccine, and this many people died in this many cases and blah, 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 blah. And then at night, like to wind down before bed, you're watching serial killer documentaries. You know what I mean? Like, tell me that you watch that serial killer documentary and then you lay down in bed in the dark. And especially if you're a single female, you're not just kind of like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. Like that doesn't help you. So it's like it's the same thing as processed food, right? Like eating whole foods is great, but step one is like removing the junk. You should remove junk entertainment from your life. You should remove junk media, junk news. This is literally like, it's like processed, we'll call it processed information. Like you should remove processed information the same way you should remove processed foods.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Because if you're just trying to do, 5 minutes, let's say you're just trying to do 5 minutes meditation before you go to bed, it's not going to compensate for, the 2 hours of crime shows that you just watched that completely like got you all riled up. And yeah, it's you have to calm the nervous system down. So it's like always start by removing, and then you can start tweaking and adding the things that are healthy for you. So
it's the same thing. It's people will message me about when it was Perfect Paleo Powder, or they'll message me now about Clovis Complete, the daily superfood. And it's like the number one question I get is like, will this make me lose weight? And I'm like, that's a loaded question. Like, we got to go through all the variables in your life that are preventing you from losing weight. We need to remove those first. Will this assist in your healthy lifestyle? Yup. Will it make you magically lose weight if it's like you're taking Clovis Complete twice a day and then eating nothing but processed food? You're going to be in big trouble. Arguably, it like will help your health, but you're not going to lose weight that way. So this is a really interesting thing. Remove first, always.
Yeah. It's like our bodies are meant to be healthy and at a healthy weight for whatever size we are. There's something you're doing or something around you that is causing you to be in a state of an imbalance, basically dysbiosis of some sort. So it's like people are always looking for an external factor to take or to add to their regimen to magically fix them, while they don't understand that their body is trying and fighting to be healthy and stable, but there's something getting in the way. So it's like you have to get out of your own way and let nature do its thing.
Yeah, it's blockages. It's literally, think of it like blockages. Like real next level, like what I would call morbid obesity is like a couple 100 years old. This was just not a thing. Even like if you were to read, history books or something about people that were overweight or obese, or like, some fancy president with a fancy white wig on his head that was like fat. He's not fat like people are fat today. Not fat like people that are like completely disabled that need to like roll around in wheelchairs or scooters or something because they're so big. That's very, very recent in human history. Like we are designed to be at like this really calm homeostasis, like a comfortable body weight and everything. This kind of leads me into, let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, I love this episode, but let's keep going. So it leads me into something that you brought up before we started recording. The body wants to be healthy. The body should be healthy. We should have every possible opportunity to be healthy people. And while we're on the subject of vaccines, this gets way hairier. Anytime you're talking about vaccinations and kids, it's very easy to be labeled an anti-vaxxer or somebody that just loves vaccinations, and there's no nuance. I think both you and I fall somewhere probably in the middle of that. But yeah, let's just share a little bit about the author that you were talking about, her idea of vaccinations, and then we can kind of roll from there.
Yeah, this is super cool. I was going to bring the book with me, but I forgot. But it's the GAPS book, which I forget what it stands for exactly. But it is basically talking about your digestive health and in relation to psychological issues. And so she talks all about gut health, and she has a chapter in there about vaccines. And it's really interesting because she gives her opinion of kind of these because a lot of people like to attack vaccines as if like they're just the worst thing ever and they're just trying to poison us. And yeah, there's some ingredients in there that are definitely questionable, and the safety regulations around them aren't super clear and whatnot. But nevertheless, vaccines have gotten us to where we are today. Like they have saved millions of people and children who, wouldn't have gotten by without them. So it's like there's pros and cons always. And it does come back to our immune system and now how healthy are we and how able are we to handle these vaccines that are injected into us. And so her suggestion in the book is to have these 3 prerequisites, and I don't know if I can remember them all, but it was just essentially around testing a child to see how their immune system is functioning before you vaccinate them. And then the second one was doing a full health test on the parents too, to see where they're at and how healthy the mom was when she was in her pregnancy and all of that, because it plays a huge role in the kid's immune system. And then the third one was based on how healthy the child is, his or her immune system, vaccinating as needed and vaccinating one vaccine at a time instead of injecting, multiple viruses at once, which would never happen in nature and is way more difficult for the body to process. Doing one at a time, and if the child's not healthy yet, then wait, hold off, fix their immune system, fix their microbiome, and then slowly as needed add the vaccines.
I love that. It's amazing. There is such an obsession with giving them all the vaccines as quickly as possible in this weird bundle. It's like, do you really think that from age 1 to 6 months, they're at like some giant risk of getting polio and measles, mumps, rubella, and all this shit. It's like in the first 6 months, they're home. They're with you. They're not like out interacting with other kids and stuff, you know? It's so crazy, this idea that we need to do that so quickly in such a ridiculous schedule. And the vaccination topic is always interesting to me because, again, let's go back to societal pressures and consumption shaming. I vote consumption shaming 2021. But it's this idea with pregnant women. Something interesting that we do is they're given virtually free reign to give in to all of their crazy cravings and eat all of the junk that they want. Like every movie that you ever see that's portraying a husband and wife when the wife is pregnant, and the husband's job is to just like run to the store and buy like pints of ice cream and Doritos and cakes and cookies and pizza and soda, whatever the wife wants, the wife gets. So you're eating for two, eat all of the calories and eat all of the junk. It's this crazy thing. And something that I don't think people realize is like, I've heard stories of like pregnant women licking ashtrays because they have crazy cravings. And they're like, what are these cravings? I knew a woman that was pregnant that wanted to eat chalk. I heard a story about another woman that wanted to lick ashtrays. So think about these things, right? These are cravings for minerals. They're trying to get minerals, right? So they're eating all of this energy, like no protein, none of these things, or a lot of these food cravings that are happening. It's literally that the body is starved specifically for either minerals or micronutrients. So if they're going for like an ashtray or chalk or something, they're trying to get, literal minerals from like rocks and stone, the same way that we get like salt and potassium and magnesium and all these things, you know? So the micronutrients, what the body is craving, it's telling you to eat everything in sight. So you're getting these crazy cravings now, and also like salty foods, generally speaking, that means like you were getting potassium or something bloody. The only times we really like got salty things in nature as our ancestors are like that umami taste that they have, usually was telling you if you're eating umami and salty things, you're usually getting that from a bloody animal. So now we're eating like Pringles and chips and all these things. The body is getting taste signals that tell it it's getting protein, but no protein is entering the system. So you eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. Now what happens is you get tremendous metabolic dysfunction, and your baby is born with tremendous metabolic dysfunction and a very weak immune system. Nobody wants to talk about this. It is much easier to blame the medical system, to blame the vaccinations, like you said, to say these are the most evil things in the world, even though they've saved countless lives. You know, and I'm not saying that all vaccinations need to be done. I think there's 4 to 5 times the amount of vaccinations that like our parents got in the 1960s or whatever. We're about the same age. So, yeah, it's crazy. I think the schedule is nuts. I think they're giving way too many to babies, but we need to put a better health on consumption shaming. But again, it's like, I'm on a podcast right now telling you that we should shame a pregnant woman's food decisions. Do you know how many people, people might turn the podcast off right now, literally just hearing me speak about this. And then everyone's going to love the fact that I don't have kids and I've never been with a pregnant partner. I get all of that. But understand, I care more about your kid's health and your kid's immune system than I care about your feelings, period. I don't give a fuck how you feel about that. I care more about your kid's health than I care about your sad little ego feelings because you want to eat cheesecake. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't know why. There just needs to be more of an emphasis on this, and it comes back full circle. I wanted to finish the conversation with this topic because we're talking about vaccinations for kids. We're talking about vaccinations for grown-ups now with COVID-19. Who is at the highest risk of complications from vaccines? Metabolically broken people, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sums it up. What you can do, the only proactive thing you can do is focus on your health. Focus on your health so that your kids can be healthy and, lead by example. And focus on the factors of your life that you can control: food, diet, lifestyle, sleep, all these different things. And yeah, just stop. We're wasting so much energy blaming everything outside of our lives because it makes us feel like we don't have to take control of our own lives. But it's like no one's coming to save you. You always say this.
Yeah, that's it.
It's true.
Amen. That was a fantastic summary of everything we just talked. That was like perfect. You're an excellent co-host.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep you.
Thanks for having me. Yay.
Yeah, of course.
I passed.
Yeah. Did we miss anything? Anything else you want to cover? Anything you want to share? Or?
I just wanted to say the GAPS book, it's Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And her name is Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. And she's amazing. She had, I think it was a son or a child that had autism and was able to reverse that. And I know that's very controversial, but I just recommend you read the book or, look into her. She has a lot of amazing research, and a lot of success. So yeah, just a great resource if anyone wants to look further into that.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes and everything. I will also give all of you a link to Combating Coronavirus if you want to take a look at that ebook that I wrote back in March. And then, I mean, honestly, if you want to just skip all the bullshit and get as healthy as humanly possible right now, go to iamclovis.com/start, START, iamclovis.com/start. Get a custom nutrition plan. I will fix your health, period. I think Lilly agrees.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best. I'm a little bit biased, but it's simple. It's to the point and it covers all of it. And you just have a tough love, but no BS kind of approach. And it's what we need.
Yeah.
There's just too many people out there trying to tell you that you don't have to change anything and you can be healthy. And it's just not the case. It's not. And we're seeing it. So don't go through all that. Just go to someone like Justin who's actually interested in making you healthy and doing it as fast and as easy as possible. And yeah, you're going to reap the benefits of that in every other aspect of your life. It really does have ripple effects throughout your whole life just to fix your individual health, because you can show up as so much of a better person. So I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so we'll put that in the show notes as well. And let's just remove the guesswork. Come to somebody who knows what we're doing, and we will fix your health. And that's it. And also, I think we're going to do more of these. I got some travel coming up here soon. December's crazy for everyone with Christmas and everything. But we'll be taking questions from you guys as well and kind of do these little back and forth co-host situations. I think we'll do a lot of these in the future.
Yeah, hit us with your questions.
All right. Until next time, thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.
I got a good thing somewhere, but I closed my eyes and lost my way. I found something out there, but I waited way too long.